I don't think I'll ever forget the sound of that sentence leaving his mouth. Everything, your home, the business, all financial assets, has been left to Saraphina Elwood. For a second, I thought I misheard him. My ears rang. My heart. It just stopped. Not metaphorically. Literally, it felt like it skipped. My breath caught in my throat as if my body refused to process what the lawyer just said. Saraphina squeezed my hand, her fingers cold and perfectly manicured. I could feel the fake tremble in her grip. She leaned in closer, eyes already welling up with those fragile, glassy tears that somehow never smudged her mascara. Lyra, I didn't know, she whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling with perfectly crafted heartbreak. Let me back up for a second. Saraphina Elwood is my older sister. 3 years older, to be exact. Stunning, successful. The type who walks into a room and makes it feel like a magazine cover. People love her, she knows it. She's been charming her way through life since we were kids. But to me, she was still my sister, my family, my safe person. At least I thought she was. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My tongue felt thick, heavy like it had turned to stone. The words were caught somewhere between confusion and rage, lodged in the back of my throat. I stared at Mr. Halden, the lawyer, expecting some kind of correction, some cruel joke followed by a more reasonable truth. But he only blinked slowly, looking down at the folder in front of him. That folder held my life, and it had just been handed over to my sister. The room was painfully still. The hum of the air conditioning suddenly sounded like it was roaring in my ears. I could hear the faint tick of the antique brass clock on the corner shelf, counting down the seconds of what had just become a completely different reality. My fingers twitched. I wanted to say something, to scream, to demand an explanation. But instead, I just sat there, frozen, hollowed out by disbelief. My body stiffened in the leather chair as if bracing for an impact that had already hit. How? Why? Those were the only words repeating in my head like a broken reel. Why Saraphina? Why not me? Why everything? I looked over at her. Her bottom lip quivered like she was about to break down. Her hand brushed a tear off her cheek. It was a beautiful performance. I'll give her that. Oscar-worthy. But then something flickered. For just a moment, just one fraction of a second, her eyes shifted, sharp, quick, calculated. She glanced at the will in Mr. Halden's hand, then at me, and then back to her weepy expression. Her gaze flicked back like a rubber band snapping into place. That was when I knew. She knew. The tears weren't shock. They were relief. She'd been waiting for this moment. I could hear my heartbeat now, loud, pounding in my ears, my nails dug into my palm. That's when I felt it, the envelope, still tucked safely inside my bag, the one Calum gave me just days before he died, wax sealed, his initials on the back, heavy with something I hadn't dared open, something I thought was just a formality, insurance paperwork, a note to say goodbye. But now, I remembered his eyes, the way they looked at me when he gave it to me. Sad, yes, but alert, intentional. Open this only if something doesn't feel right. His exact words, and nothing about this felt right. I loosened my grip on Saraphina's hand and pulled it away slowly. She blinked at me, her head tilting slightly. Picture of hurt and concern, but I didn't match her expression. I didn't give her anything. I reached into my bag, fingers trembling slightly as they found the edges of the envelope. It was time. Time to hear the truth. Calum didn't trust anyone else to deliver. I stood up slowly. Mr. Halden raised his brows. Saraphina's smile froze, just barely, like a mask slipping out of place. I placed the envelope on the polished oak table between us and said calmly, "There's something else." Something Calum wanted read, just in case. And in that moment, the room fell silent. To understand why that moment hit me so hard, why I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me when Saraphina's name was read, you have to know what life looked like before the silence, before the will, before the envelope. Calum and I had been married for 10 years, 10 years of chaos and beauty, of designing a life, literally. We ran a boutique interior design firm together called Juniper and Brass. We built it from the ground up, laying tile samples on our kitchen floor at midnight and arguing over fabric textures like it was life or death. That business was more than income. It was our identity. And then came the diagnosis. It started with Calum forgetting things, tiny things, keys, a client's name. At first, we joked about it. We were just too busy, right? But then, one day, he forgot how to get home from the office. That was the day everything changed. Doctors confirmed it was a rare neurological disorder. Fast, unforgiving. There was no treatment, just time. And not much of it. I felt like I was drowning in slow motion. That's when Saraphina swept in. She was always the one with answers. The oldest, the most composed, the one who somehow never let life touch her too roughly. She arrived the day Calum got his final diagnosis, heels clicking on the hospital floor, her black coat still dusted with snow. She hugged me like I was fragile glass and said, "You don't have to do this alone, Lyra." I'm here now. And she was, constantly. She took over managing the appointments, organizing the medications, even helping with our clients, just to keep things afloat. Everyone praised her. Friends, nurses, even Kylam. "You're lucky to have a sister like her," they all said, and for a while I believed them. But there were things, small things, the kind you dismiss when you're exhausted and scared, like how Kylam would stop talking the moment I entered a room, or how Saraphina always seemed to have his phone, answering calls, replying to texts, like some efficient executive assistant I never hired. I remember one night walking past Calem's study and hearing their voices, low, fast, urgent. When I stepped in, they both stopped. Saraphina smiled that wide, sugar-sweet smile and said, "We were just figuring out how to update the business contracts." Something about her tone didn't sit right, but I was too tired to push it. And Kylam, he looked guilty, not panicked, not scared, just guilty. I brushed it off. My husband was dying, my sister was helping. Why was I being so paranoid? But paranoia is just instinct we haven't learned how to explain yet. In those final days, Calum barely spoke, but one evening, he called me into his room. His voice was rough, barely there. His fingers trembled as he handed me a thick, sealed envelope with his initials in wax. "Lyra," he said, eyes locked to mine, "open this only if something doesn't feel right." I held it in both hands, the paper warm from his touch. I wanted to ask what it meant, but his eyelids fluttered shut before I could. And then he slept. And then he never really woke again. After he passed, I tucked the envelope away. I couldn't bear to open it. I thought it was a goodbye letter, a list of passwords, a gesture of love I'd get to someday when I could read his words without breaking. But then Saraphina's name was read, and suddenly, everything felt wrong. A week after Calem's funeral, I found myself standing outside Mr. Halden's office, staring at the old brass plaque on his door like it was written in another language. My stomach was twisting. I hadn't eaten in almost 2 days. Couldn't. My whole body felt hollow, like grief had chewed me up and spat out a ghost wearing my skin. The office was quiet, warm, too warm, the kind of warm that makes your skin itch under your clothes. I sat down on the edge of the leather chair and tried not to breathe too loud. Saraphina sat beside me, all black silk and perfect posture. She looked like she'd stepped out of a morning fashion catalog, a tasteful pearl brooch, a single teardrop earring. Of course she cried. Soft, dabbing tears with a linen handkerchief. Not the kind of crying that leaves you gasping and red-eyed like me at the funeral, but the kind that draws sympathy, admiration, attention. She patted my knee. Her voice was hushed. "Whatever he left behind, Lyra, it was yours first. You know that, right?" I just nodded, even though her words felt like ice down my spine. Mr. Halden walked in, his presence instantly commanding. He was a tall man, broad shoulders, kind eyes. Calum trusted him, so I did too. He sat behind the polished desk and opened a thick folder with our names on it. Mine, Calum's, Saraphina's. He cleared his throat. Per Calum Thorne's final will and testament, the entirety of his estate, including real estate, business assets, and financial accounts, will be transferred to Saraphina Elwood. That moment, I can't describe it properly. It was like the air was sucked out of the room. My ears rang, my vision tunneled. I swear the walls got smaller. I blinked. Once, twice. Saraphina let out a soft gasp, like she was as shocked as I was. She reached for my hand, clasping it tightly. Lyra. I had no idea. I would never... Her voice broke like glass, and for a moment I almost believed her. But then I looked at her face, and I saw it. That flicker. That half second where her eyes darted to the folder in Mr. Halden's hands, then back to me, like she needed to check if I bought it, if I was still playing my part as the grieving, clueless sister. And just like that, everything shifted. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just sat there, perfectly still. But inside, my thoughts were racing so fast they collided with each other. How could Calum do this to me? Why her? What am I missing? Then I remembered. The envelope. I could practically feel it through the fabric of my handbag, tucked safely in the side pocket where I hadn't dared touch it since the day he gave it to me. Calum's words whispered through my memory like a slow echo. Open this. Only if something doesn't feel right. Well, nothing felt right. I stood up so slowly the chair barely creaked beneath me. Mr. Halden paused mid-sentence. Saraphina blinked up at me, her expression still frozen in its carefully constructed grief. I reached into my bag and felt the thick edges of the envelope, the wax seal still perfectly intact. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the sudden certainty that everything was about to change. Mr. Halden, I said quietly, there's something else Calum left. Something he said to bring if things didn't feel right. I laid it down gently on the table right in front of him. Saraphina didn't move, and that's when I realized she already knew exactly what was in it. The envelope was heavier than I remembered. It rested on the center of the table like a stone, sealed with deep red wax. Calum's initials, CT, still pressed perfectly into the surface. I couldn't stop staring at it. That seal had felt like a symbol of love when he first gave it to me. But now, it pulsed with something deeper, something ominous. Mr. Halden adjusted his glasses. His expression shifted from mild confusion to focused concern as he reached for it. Where did this come from? He asked, gently turning it over in his hands. I swallowed hard. My voice was low, but steady. Calum gave it to me 3 days before he passed. He said, only open it if something didn't feel right after he was gone. Saraphina let out a soft breath, almost like a scoff, too quiet to call out, but loud enough that I heard it. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. If I did, I might lose the calm I was clinging to by a thread. Mr. Halden carefully broke the seal, the wax cracking with a soft snap that made my entire body tense. He pulled out several sheets, legal stationery and a handwritten note clipped on top. His eyes scanned the paper. His eyebrows began to slowly draw together. He didn't speak right away. He just read. The room felt colder suddenly, though I could see sunlight through the blinds. My palms were damp, my chest tight. I could hear every tick of that damn brass clock in the corner, like it was counting down to some invisible explosion. What is it, Calum? What did you leave me? Finally, Mr. Halden cleared his throat. He looked up at me, and there was something new in his expression, something that hadn't been there before. Respect, and something else, concern. Lyra, this document is legally binding, he said slowly. It's a notarized codicil. Direct amendment to Calum's previous will. It overrides the original. I blinked. Overrides? Saraphina stiffened beside me. What do you mean, overrides? She asked quickly, the softness evaporating from her voice like mist burning off in the sun. Mr. Halden lifted the handwritten page. This is Calum's final letter, and I'm instructed to read it aloud in the presence of both parties. He paused, looked between us. I nodded. Saraphina didn't, but he began anyway. To Lyra, my wife, if you're hearing this, then something happened that I feared might. I'm sorry. I failed in more ways than you'll ever know, and this letter is part of my attempt to set things right. My lungs tightened. The room was fading around me. All I could hear was Calum's voice in my head, as if he were standing behind me. Mr. Halden continued, Months before my diagnosis, I made a terrible mistake. I was vulnerable, confused, and in that moment of weakness, I trusted the wrong person, someone I never imagined would use my illness for their own benefit. My stomach turned. Saraphina's nails tapped against her armrest. She wasn't crying now. Mr. Halden didn't stop. Saraphina convinced me to sign a new will, assuring me it was temporary. She said she was protecting you, but I realized, too late, that she was positioning herself to take everything. There it was. The truth, laid bare. Mr. Halden looked up from the letter, almost apologetic. This codicil reverses the estate transfer. Calum left everything to you, Lyra. The house, the business, the savings. It's all yours. Saraphina's chair creaked as she leaned forward, voice sharp like broken glass. That's not possible. You're not seriously accepting that over a signed will. But Mr. Halden cut her off, calm and unwavering. This document is dated, witnessed, and notarized. It holds up. Saraphina's face shifted. No more sadness, no confusion, just rage, quiet and simmering. But I didn't look away this time. I met her eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw her clearly. The silence that followed Mr. Halden's words wasn't just quiet. It was dead, still. Like the room itself was holding its breath. Saraphina didn't speak, not right away. Her expression had frozen somewhere between disbelief and fury. The hand that once clutched mine so tenderly now gripped the edge of her armrest, knuckles white. I didn't move. I didn't blink. My eyes were locked on hers, and for the first time, I didn't look away. Because I knew. Every suspicion, every uneasy glance, every night I'd tossed and turned, wondering if grief was making me paranoid. This moment proved it all. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. Mr. Halden placed the envelope and its contents beside the folder that once held the original will, now null. Useless. A puppet document written under manipulation. He cleared his throat softly, looking toward Saraphina. If you have any objections, Ms. Elwood, you'll need to file them formally. But I'll be honest with you, this document is ironclad. Your window to contest it is slim, and Calum left a very detailed trail. Saraphina laughed. Once. Sharp. Bitter. He was sick. He didn't know what he was doing. You're really going to take the word of a dying man over a legal document signed weeks earlier? I turned to her slowly. You mean the one you pressured him into signing while he could barely think straight? The one you helped him draft while I was out filling prescriptions? Her eyes snapped to mine. There it was. That flash like lightning. All pretense gone. You don't understand what he wanted, she said, her voice lower now, colder. He was scared. He needed someone who could take control, who actually had vision. You were falling apart. He was my husband, I cut in. My voice didn't waver, though my chest was pounding. And I was your sister, she fired back. I was doing what neither of you could do, protecting what he built. Mr. Halden's pen clicked softly as he closed the file in front of him. Regardless of your motives, Ms. Elwood, Coylum made his final decision, legally, authentically, and with absolute clarity. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. Her breathing had changed, shallow, clipped. I saw the truth in her then, plain and unfiltered. She had never come to help. She had come to take. Coylum had been her opportunity, and for a while, she'd won. Until he saw her for who she was, until he remembered who he was, who we were. And now, he had spoken. From beyond the grave, through ink and parchment, with more clarity than he'd ever had while alive. It wasn't about the money, or even the business. It was about trust, about truth, about giving me something no one else had since the moment he died, a voice. Saraphina didn't say goodbye. She just left, coat over her arm, heels echoing in the corridor like a warning shot fading into silence. I sat there for a moment after she was gone. My body finally released the tension it had been holding for days, maybe weeks. I looked at Mr. Halden, who gave me a small, almost sympathetic nod. He meant for you to have this, he said gently. I nodded. I couldn't speak just yet. My throat was tight, but not from grief. It was something else now, something I hadn't felt since Calum got sick. Strength. Not the loud kind, the earned kind. The kind that's built through fire, forged through betrayal, and sealed with truth. I gathered the envelope and the amended will, my fingers brushing Caleb's signature. One final act of love, one last safeguard, and I thought to myself, he knew. He knew her. He knew me. And even in the end, he chose me. It's strange how silence changes once the storm passes. That room, where minutes before my world had tilted and nearly cracked in half, was now calm, not just quiet but peaceful. I could finally breathe, deeply, without the weight of doubt sitting on my chest. The letter, the envelope, the truth Caleb left behind. It didn't just change the legal outcome, it changed me. For days after, I kept the envelope on my nightstand. I'd catch myself staring at it before falling asleep, not because I needed to reread it, but because it reminded me of something I hadn't felt in a long time, that he believed in me. Caleb made mistakes. I don't deny that. He let Saraphina in too far. He ignored things he shouldn't have. And yes, he betrayed me once. I won't sugarcoat that. But in the end, when he had nothing left but clarity and time, he gave me something so much bigger than any apology. He gave me truth. He gave me choice. And he gave me protection in the only way he still could. The days that followed weren't clean or easy. Saraphina sent me one message, a cold, clipped voice note saying she wouldn't forget this. I never replied. I didn't need to. She had taken her shot, and she lost. Not because I beat her, but because Caleb chose to see her clearly just once, and that was enough to undo everything she'd built. I took time off from the business after that. I needed to. I needed to find out who I was without him, without her, without the chaos. For the first time in years, it was quiet. No one making decisions for me. No one managing me. No one smiling with hidden knives in their hands. It was terrifying and freeing. I started slow, organizing files, repainting the office, updating the logo. I changed the name from Juniper and Brass to Lyra Studio. Simple, honest, mine. I found new clients. I reconnected with old ones. I started saying no more often, especially to people who smiled like Saraphina. And somewhere in that rebuilding, I found something I didn't expect to discover again. Joy. Not the loud kind, not the movie scene kind, but the kind that creeps in while you're making coffee in a quiet kitchen, or when you finally sleep through the night without waking from grief, or when you laugh at something dumb on TV and realize you're not faking it anymore. That kind. People ask me sometimes if I forgave Caleb. I tell them the truth. I don't think forgiveness is always loud or pretty. Sometimes it looks like setting the weight down and walking forward anyway. I may never fully understand the choices he made when he was scared, but I will always remember what he chose when he was clear. He chose to leave me the truth, not a house, not a bank account, not a company, the truth. And that's worth everything. Because when the people you love are gone, what they leave behind becomes your story to carry. And I'm done carrying anyone else's version but my own. So if you're watching this and your gut is whispering, something doesn't feel right, listen to it. I ignored mine for too long. Don't wait for a sealed envelope to open your eyes. Sometimes the love you need is the truth they were too afraid to say while they were still here. If you made it this far, thank you, truly, for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but some truths are too important to keep buried. If this resonated with you, even a little, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story too. And if you've ever trusted someone who didn't deserve it, just know you're not alone. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more real stories like this, raw, messy, honest, and remember, sometimes closure doesn't come in conversation. Sometimes it comes sealed in an envelope, waiting for the moment you're finally ready to open it. Take care of your heart and trust your gut. I'll see you in the next one.